Welcome to WYCD Wicked. That stands for What You Can Do. It's your old pal Jake, and we are trying a new way of streaming on this bonus stream on a weekday afternoon. The idea here is going to be to one, go a little easier on the old CPU, and two, maybe see if there is a way to attract a larger audience just by changing the pattern in which I put out videos. So that is what this is all about. Also, I'll be honest with y'all, I just like the energy in the slightly more free-form streams that we do where we're just talking about this stuff, and a lot of the time the best ideas about what to do come as a result of chatting with the Wicked audience. So we're gonna change it up just a little bit for this stream, see how it works, and we will of course have our normal stream at 8 p.m. tonight. I'm excited to see y'all there, but in the meantime, let's jump straight into it. So Vosh, a popular streamer on BreadTube, recently discussed some interesting polls that I think we should have a look at because we can take advantage of. Those polls generally reflect that America is sick of hearing Republicans whine about woke culture. They're sick of it. Good. That is long overdue. Let's have a look at what Vosh had to say.
I've been trying to mix in a little bit more positivity in my streams lately, though, not without reason. I don't want to gas you all up without what I consider a good justification. There's a lot of bad stuff happening right now and a lot of bad signs on the horizon. However, this is something we've talked about before, and this is the most concrete, definite empirical evidence we have of a positive trend that I've talked about. You guys might remember that the Republican Party right now really obsessed with trans people. We've covered this. And the 2022 midterm elections did not go as well for the Republicans as expected. Exit polls after those elections showed that even though trans people are far and away the thing that the GOP talks most about, like overwhelmingly so, it was actually lowest on the list of priorities for Republican voters. Not for voters generally. Obviously, Democrats aren't going for that, mostly. But Republican voters. What I interpreted this as is a positive sign. So I want to rehash my theory here before I get to the conclusion, because I try to pride myself in making good predictions about what'll happen, and I think this is a good one to ride on. I care about this one.
Before he rehashes, I do want to chime in and say, let us make a note of those politicians that were stirring up hate against trans people. Let's make a note of it. Write it down in your big book of notes. In fact, I think we should steal from Warhammer 40K a little bit and start a book of grudges. Just like there were folks who were members of the KKK in the Tennessee Senate back in the day, maybe today, based on how they've been voting lately. But we chose to let that go as America decided we would no longer accept terrorists in positions of power. We chose to ignore those with a past doing that. We should make a note right now of the people committing just atrocious acts against trans folks, the people who are targeting trans folks for political reasons. We should make a note of them and hang it around their neck for the rest of their lives. People like forget even politics. Tucker Carlson, Laura Ingraham. Those two should have it mentioned to them in every public forum for the rest of time that they were anti-trans bigots. All of their evil. But yes, Tuberville, all the far right politicians who are ranting and raving about trans folks. One of the things we should do throughout the rest of American history, or at the very least, while we are alive and they are alive, is always slap them with the fact that they did that, unless and until every last one of these of this filth is out of the public eye, permanently retired, done. This filth genuinely needs to be called what it is at all times. All right, now on to Vosh's theory and the poll that is backing up.
So reactionary politics have been around basically forever. You can take it back to the pharaohs, okay? There have always been leaders, parties, periods of history during which people attempt to consolidate political power through xenophobia, through the creation of in-groups and the removal of out-groups, through bigotry, through genocide. This isn't anything new, okay? Now, obviously, the modern two-party dynamic we have in this country, this representation of like liberalism versus conservatism, is a distinctly modern phenomena. It's a post-nation state phenomena. For a long time, Republicans and Democrats, at least since the Southern strategy, since the switch of the parties, there's been kind of like two like kind of competing and kind of collaborating bodies of political thought, right? And one of them is like progressive liberal capitalism, and the other is reactionary conservative capitalism.
You ever wonder why I like Vosh? My God, it's stuff like this. Keep it going, brother.
Which later fermented towards like neoliberalism and neoconservatism, respectively, which are basically the same thing, except the latter hates gay people more. And the basic gist of both of these are, okay, the goal of the Democrat and Republican parties are to consolidate as much wealth as possible in the hands of their donors. Their donors are, of course, the wealthy, People like Bernie Sanders, with average donation amount $13 or whatever, they're the exception. The rule, overwhelmingly in politics, is that money that is used to operate the machinery of a political party, that comes from very wealthy people. It comes from corporations. We've had plenty of Supreme Court decisions about how this money is used, how it's distributed. It's a big deal. And, a party is probably not going to get very much in the way of monetary support if it turns around and backstabs its donors by implementing socialism. So both parties are pretty pro-corporate. Maybe not to the same extent, but they've leaned that way for a long time. And what they sell voters on are social issues. See, the average voter doesn't know anything about economics, and I don't blame them for that, because economic stuff is really complicated. Experts get it wrong all the time. But people do have a vested interest in a wide variety of social issues and civic issues that are more local, more immediately understandable. They tie into subjects that people have a more intuitive understanding of. Very few people are sociologists, but everybody has an opinion on sociology, but not the same for economics, not really. The Democrats, since the Southern strategy, have leaned more towards the progressive side of things. What are we going to sell our voters on? Well, we're going to sell them on this form of progressivism, this, that, the other. Republicans, the other side, sell them more on law and order, xenophobia, anti-immigration.
First up, hey, Wicked audience, good to see you. Foxy Dragon, Wicked Foxy Dragon, Mars Falcon, delighted to see you both. Folks, if you're enjoying the stream, please hit like, and if you haven't subscribed, do it. By all means, do it, because I'm shameless about begging for him. Did want to say no notes for what he's saying up here. No notes for Vosh. Things we can take away from this. What he's touching on, very important for making a case to a group that you think might not necessarily agree with you or should agree with you, but doesn't seem to be. Focus on what people see, what people feel. You throw a bunch of numbers at somebody, you're going to be essentially asking them to do the homework to check on you. No one will do that. If you're trying to sway, focus on what people see and feel and build your case off of that. All right, keep it going, my brother.
Right. Things have changed lately. See, historically, I believe the Republican Party has been reactionary to get the votes to be pro corporate. The end goal was being pro corporate. But right now, as the Republican Party descends more aggressively into fascism, they are not being reactionary to be pro corporate. They're being reactionary to be reactionary. The behavior of figures like Donald Trump, Marjorie Taylor Greene, whatever else, is it pro corporate? Sure. But I don't think that's the number one priority. I think that as the reactionary sentiment grows more vitriolic, more pronounced, more distilled, I think that we see a clearer set of intentions where the pro corporate stuff is nice and good, but hasn't the GOP been pretty anti corporate lately? I mean, maybe not like in a real way, but at least nominally. Ron DeSantis has been openly going after Disney. The GOP for nearly a decade now has been attacking globalism, international trade. Donald Trump tried to start a trade war with China, which American corporations do not want, not even a little bit. Woke corporation this, woke corporation that. The GOP has been pretty willing to criticize corporations who are anti-American lately. Anti-American, of course, meaning not reactionary enough. So what do they actually care about? Well, I mean, Hitler was pro-corporate. Term privatization was coined to describe what Nazi Germany did with regards to the privatization of their businesses. But Hitler's main goal was not privatization. That was a means to an end. The end, of course, being I think the GOP has been getting more and more committed to reactionary politics for the sake of reactionary politics.
Agreed. I do, however, want to point out, and I'm pretty sure he doesn't talk about this, I want to point out the opening that gives us. Remember that chart I show where it's the four parties as I sees them and what motivates them? MAGA and GOP on the Republican side, corporate Dems, and progressives on the Democrat side. They have accidentally dipped into an area where we can make a strong case to MAGA folks just by asking questions, where we acknowledge their motivations, I mean their core motivations, as legitimate, and simply point out, look, yeah, we're under fire, but they're pointing you everywhere but where the shooter is not. Let me show you where that fire is coming from. It's right, y'all. And just bear that in mind. We don't have to outpush this. We can judo it, step aside, put a foot out, and let the GOP, let all the energy they've been putting into fighting us instead work for us. But let Vosh keep going.
Now, that is a historically effective strategy for fascists, okay? People, again, don't care that much about economic issues, at least not most of them. They're too tough to understand, and they fall for bait pretty easily. People do care about social issues. So the real question is, how effectively can the GOP promote socially regressive policies as a centerpiece to their political strategy? And I'm delighted to say, my friends, that since the 2022 midterms, and with increasing certainty up to now, I don't think they can. This poll came out, I think, 2 days ago. A majority say Republicans should spend less time talking about wokeness. Now, wokeness is like the catch-all term for progressivism now. It's basically settled, definitionally. And what we see here, and there are some confusing numbers here that I'll talk about, but what we see here broadly is that in essentially every group, there is a net bias towards talk about it less. Even for very conservative Republicans, there is a 16-point net difference in favor of, please God, talk about wokeness less. Even for very conservative Republicans. For non-very conservative Republicans, it's plus 28 in favor of talk about it less. Obviously, for independents, it's even more so, plus 30. For Democrats, it's plus 39. Now, some of these numbers are a bit interesting. They're difficult to parse at first glance. Why do 24% of Democrats
Good God Almighty. This is going to be super convenient because I get to cover up Vosh. And I'll jump back to the brother in a moment. But look, there's more there than even he is bringing up. Talk about it less, says 16% of the most GOP-leaning GOP folks. Not GOP, MAGA-leaning MAGA folks. 16%. Talk about it less, they say. What else does that mean? Well, that means we should talk about it more. Why? Because obviously they've done a poor job of talking about this stuff. So the things they label as woke, and their only argument against them is that they're woke. They clearly are not able to sway people. I bet we are. I bet we are. Obviously, you're going to have to change how you talk about it based on who you're talking to. You're talking to MAGA folks, you're going to have to make the case successfully, and you can. The facts are there for you, no matter who you're talking to, but you're going to have to make the case that these anti-woke policies negatively affect the rights of MAGA voters. That's just truth. It's truth. Hammer that home. Remember, when they're banning books, they're also banning the Bible by their rules. Remember when they're saying you can't talk about your husband at work if you're a man who's married. If you're a woman who's married, you can't talk about your wife. Well, they're also saying you can't talk about your spouse if you're straight. The rules can be interpreted that way. And all of it is the government establishing authority over our personal lives. That's what all of it is. And they have not, the Republicans have not made the case successfully to their voters that the things they say they'll get by being cruel to these people will actually be of benefit to these people. That's why they don't want them to talk about this as much. They've made the case poorly, and we can make the actual case. So let's drill into that. A weakness has been identified. Take advantage. Back to it, Vosh.
Democrats want Republicans to talk about wokeness more. I bet a lot of that is because some Democrats understand that this is a losing strategy for the GOP. A lot of it is also probably because the average voter, Democrat, Republican, anyone else, is an idiot, and they probably answer these questions by slamming their face against the phone. And the poll taker had to just sort of interpret the slapping they heard on the other hand, or on the other side. I can't really guess. What I'm talking about here is trends, okay? And the trend here is significant. Interestingly, black people and the racial groups are massively outsized in the Republicans should talk about wokeness more. Interesting to me. Black people overwhelmingly vote Democrat, and using the term woke to describe disparagingly progressivism has been done against black people for longer than it's been done against trans people. Remember? The whole, this is woke, that is woke, back during the, Black Lives Matter and earlier was mostly they put black people in my TV show thing. Now it's kind of broadly a progressive thing, but there was definitely more of a, racial inclination at the time, which makes sense because woke was initially AAVE. So, they turned it around and stabbed the community with it. The results here make me really, really, really optimistic because this suggests to me that the Republicans are doing a bad job, even to their own constituency, of legitimizing the extent to which they talk about, right now, trans people. Isn't that great? I mean, the consequence of that, if you extrapolate it down the line, is that they will either wane in prominence or they'll have to change up their messaging. But there's only so many times you can change up the messaging in a way that still preserves the underlying logic. They can stop saying woke and start saying blorp. But people will catch on. People get fatigue on this. I've talked before about the Nazis. You've probably heard that on this channel in the past. But there is an analogy that I like to draw between the Nazis and the Republicans, which is actually favorable to the Nazis in the sense that, in terms of optics and rhetoric, okay?
Boy, he's going to have to do a lot of work on this one, but all right, let's give him a shot.
If you go back and you read or listen to, if you can understand German, Hitler's speeches or stuff that Goebbels said or the Nazis or whatever, you understand their propaganda. And you should try to understand their propaganda because you'll see a lot of parallels. But if you go back and you look, right, a consistent trend is that the demonization of the other is paired with a eulogization of an imagined better world. Now, I want to be clear. The better world the Nazis advertised was a bad one. Not defending it. I'm talking only about how well they were able to sell this hateful vision to the people of Germany. And what they did was they balanced the hatred of those around them, the Jews, the Untermenschen, whatever, with aspirational messaging about the future of their countrymen. The GOP doesn't do that. The GOP talks almost exclusively about hating wokeness. Even the term "Make America Great Again" hasn't seen much use lately. Have you noticed that? They don't. Go watch any Republican pundit. How much do they sit there and wax poetic about the better world they want to build? They don't. They just don't.
All right, he got there. Non-zero chance, though, that I'm going to cruelly title this stream Vosh Loves Hitler. And just see how many angry lefties I can get clicking on it based on that. I probably won't. I don't believe in mistitling things. That is a humorous thought, though. Yeah, he is right. I mean, when it comes to the GOP, what they say they want for the world, it's true. I don't even hear the "Make America Great Again" chimed in quite so much. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that lefties got smart and said, what was great about those times that you're referring to? What times are you referring to, and what was great about them? And then pointing out at every decade that they could be referring to how Republicans or conservatives, depending how far back you go, were the cause of the things people didn't like about those times. And the lefty ideas were what people liked about them. Case in point, I give you the higher tax rate. Hold up. Let's talk about this in the main screen here. See what the wicked audience has to say. Mars Falcon, Ramses II was one of the OG Union Busters. This is known. Yeah, didn't he? Didn't Ramses II do like the stereotypical boss thing and do the equivalent of a 1000 whenever BC pizza party for employees that were refusing to work? It's just funny how little things change unless we actively try to change them. Wicked Foxy Dragon says, I have been working on a blog post on this same topic. If you are talking about either Ramses II's union busting or the GOP or the Republicans being sick of talking about woke, let me know. Let me know. We will share the blog post at a minimum in the community tab because I want... One of the goals of this channel is to share great messages from around the internet, useful messages. So let me know. I'll put it in the community tab. Wicked Foxy Dragon says you have to use breaking or something like that for a clickbait title. Oh yeah, absolutely. There was something briefly like on April 1st. I was going to consider doing all clickbait titles. There might be a time in the future where find a way. It gets under my skin. Like it's one of the reasons I have trouble sharing a TYT clip because I'll see a title of theirs and I'll be like, the The way they title things these days, though, is very misleading, and I don't want to watch this whole video to see if it is something worth talking about. So usually by the time I watch a TYT clip, I already have gotten educated. Like, I have to know what they're talking about to begin with, because then I can do the math and figure out what the clip is about. And by then, I already have a source for a Wicked video. So, yeah. All right, so what can we do about this? Republicans, sick of hearing about woke stuff. Democrats, we knew they were sick of hearing about woke stuff. Everybody's sick of hearing about woke stuff from the Republican Party. Take advantage of it. Talk about woke stuff, what they consider to be woke stuff, and make it actually woke. They've done a poor job. They decided to have this fight, and then they threw weak punches, knock them out. Throw haymakers. Loosen their teeth up some. They're showing weakness. Take advantage of it. We came here for the belt. It'll be handed out on 2024. We can knock a lot of these folks out before then. Just double down on it. We don't even have to describe it as woke. Just remember that this is an area where all that talk, they were talking all that, they were popping all that good a minute ago. Then what happened? They got kicked in the chest by this poll. Kick them again. Great. Make this part of your conversation. It's as simple as that. The stuff that they consider to be woke, just make a note of it and talk about what they are asking to be done in broad terms. Do what, oh my God. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, there we go. Do what she did. Ruth Bader Ginsburg argued for women's rights quite correctly by just arguing about the rights of Americans. She said, take gender out of it. This is back when she was a lawyer. She would say, take gender out of it, and what are we looking at? We're looking at policies being suggested and being enacted that restrict the rights of Americans to X, Y, Z. 1, 2, 3. Doesn't matter. Same thing with gender stuff. In fact, let's take Drag Queen Story Hour and just look at this on its face. Let's say, I always say Drag Queen Story Hour. There was like one place that has that, a drag queen show. These places want to get rid of drag queen shows. Okay, let's talk about practically what that looks like. Literally, let's just say there was a federal ban on drag queen shows. Well, what makes a drag queen show? Somebody of one gender, usually someone who identifies as a man 99% of the time, going up on stage and wearing clothes of the other gender. Well, what constitutes clothes of the other gender? Are pants what men wear? Are you saying we can't have women on stage wearing pants? Is a skirt something that a man doesn't wear? Are you saying that we have to ban all Scottish traditional festivals because a kilt is too skirt-like? You're talking about literally making fashion police for the United States. It just doesn't make sense when you actually talk about the nuts and bolts. You take your feelings out of it entirely. It does not make any sense at all. What about Peter Pan? That is a role, Peter Pan, traditionally played by a lady. Ever since that one movie that came out like a million years ago, like what was it, 50 years ago? Peter Pan's usually played by a gal. What about traditional performances of Shakespeare that are trying to do it in the old way, where literally every part was played by a man? There are still some places that do that just to show you how it would have looked at X place and time. When you start talking about this stuff reasonably, you realize how unreasonable the GOP are being. And by the way, if these people say, all right, forget all those details, at the heart of it, I don't want kids to know drag queens exist. Well, you can just point out real life experiences. Ask yourself, do you want a child to enter the world ignorantly? Let's go in the Wayback Machine. I find it is very useful to talk about personal stories. By the way, share your personal stories. If you want to share a personal story that you feel, and it doesn't have to be a big emotional one. In fact, share a casual story. Share a story with us about last week, and I'll read it on here. Send it to wickednetwork.com/contact. I'll read some anecdotes. I do find that is helpful to let people imagine the real-world version of the broad concepts we're talking about. Let's do a personal story. Already did a video on this, one of the first ones I did. It was about Lithuanian basketball camp. As was a weird through line in my childhood, I got put on a team with very athletic kids, so I didn't have to work very hard, and wound up in the national championships. Can't stress enough, we're talking about a pudgy 12-year-old here. We're not talking about a great young athlete. But nonetheless, wound up that way. Because it's the Lithuanian basketball camp, Lithuanian Basketball League, national championships for the United States, for whatever reason, took place in Canada. Well, we went to a hotel in Toronto, and I thought, my God, Canadian women they're on the bigger side, aren't they? The big ladies here. Turns out, that was at the same time as this, international convention of drag show performers. Or perhaps it was just cross-dressers in general. I don't remember the specifics, but it was like an organization that gathered together once a year at this hotel to hang out in their finest clothes. And this was in the elevator. I'm just chatting it up with what I think are quite tall, broad-shouldered Canadian ladies. Got out of the elevator, and my dad's like, not a conversation I thought we would be having this weekend, but all right, here's the thing. Some gentlemen, as a hobby, enjoy, and then it just got explained to me the nuts and bolts of what I was apparently going to be interacting with all weekend. Let me tell you, some of the nicest people I've ever met. Hung out with your diamonds and your fancies. Had brunch with them. Made some friends. Updated, because there's the free brunch you get at a hotel, and I was cheap then, cheap now. I'm never gonna pass on a free brunch. Come on. So yeah, we're hanging out. They're updating me on how their convention's going. I'm updating them on how the old Kovas are doing in the championships. It was a great experience. It didn't, when you're a kid, it doesn't generally result in a great awakening of something that was hidden inside you. No, you just meet a different, somebody that does something different, somebody that you've not met before. And the end result is you don't obsess over it. You're not sitting there thinking, what are these mysterious people? You go, oh, yeah. You hear about a drag performer, then when you're 15, you're like, yeah, I remember Fancy. Yeah, she's a good gal. Named Frank the other 364 days a year. Irrelevant. That's the effect it has. Talk about this stuff practically with people. And most importantly, draw people into the real world. If you're going to do it through a personal anecdote, cool. Do it through a personal anecdote. If you're going to do it through just asking them questions about what they're pitching to you, fine. Do it that way. But don't let people have a political debate while remaining in the mindset that their echo chamber, including a left echo chamber, while remaining in the mindset that creates. Because it just Unless the other person's already in that chamber, it's not going to be productive. And even if they are, it's likely to be unproductive anyway. Because at the end of the day, politics have to be about what we all experience. Give it some thought. One hopes this new way of recording and not recording during the live stream will end up being beneficial. That's all I'm doing. I'm pressing the record instead of recording the entire time and then chopping it up in Premiere later. I'm recording and stopping recording all at once. Might not go so hot. We'll see. Mars Falcon. Mars Falcon. Ramses introduced Whipless Wednesdays. He was all about the peeps. I do think I do think we should do something like that. Nick, this is a good pun name. Necklace Cage says, Vosh and friends always saying woke scold is pretty problematic too. Yeah, he uses terms that I don't fully follow a lot of the time. But yeah, I think I got problems with just about everyone. Mars Falcon in response says, "Hear ya, Necklace Cage. Pick fights to expend energy on the things that matter most. Yeah, warring over others not properly, virtue signaling everything is energy that could be spent making a case for policy change. Yeah." Wicked Foxy Dragon says, "Does that mean women couldn't wear pants?" Exactly. When you talk about the reality of like a drag show band, when you get that far, it just gets silly. It's silly. All right, we got more for you. Oh boy, let's keep it though with this whole anti-trans stuff. I saw a new streamer. I think this might be fun to do. Their name's Surus, and I should probably be recording for this intro. So we're going to do a new intro. Here we go. So I saw a new streamer. They appear to be a VTuber. That's somebody who streams using a virtual avatar. And their name is Surus. Now, for the record, my plan for a while with this thing was to do that, to stream using an avatar. That's why we have that little pixelated Jake. I just thought it'd be easier. That'd be easy, like a lazier thing to do. But then like combing my hair. But it turns out no. And also we talk about some serious stuff. There was things. But my point is, I'm going to be a jealous, petty bitch about this a little bit, because I didn't have the tech skills to set this up, and they did. So I'm already a little salty about that. But looks like they have some good points. I have not seen this person before. And I wanted to watch them for the first time with you. I watched the first, 2 minutes of this. I'm like, okay, all right, they got some interesting points. So let's see what Surus has to say about Barry Weiss's anti-trans rhetoric just backfiring terribly. Here it is. Son of a gun. We're doing it again. We're doing it live. You'll have to forgive me. We're doing that whole intro again. So I recently saw a VTuber by the name of Surus. Not sure if it's Surus or Shuriz or Sure is, but nonetheless, they talked about Barry Weiss's, or backlash Barry Weiss is receiving for her anti-trans rhetoric. If you want to catch a better intro, watch the live stream, but let's jump right into what Surus had to say about this.
Wow. What a weird specific word to use here. What a weird, strange, specific phrase. I wonder if there's any particular ways in which that specific phrase has been used in the last, I don't know, few years in regards to trans people. You know, the word social contagion. I wonder if there's any specific scenarios in which that word has caused problems.
It's an intriguing channel. Let's see what they have to say.
Know a little bit about how she goes about her reporting methods by the time we're done. Before we get into that, though, it's going to be a bit of a dark one, so we're going to do some fan art, and we're going to try to get in a better headspace before we start. So, oh, that is a dumpy ditto. So, apparently, Axo that has cream has decided to tell us all that Cirrus found out that the Dumpy the Ditto profile is owned by Axo. So there is the butt. There is Ditto's butt. Processing will begin shortly. The next one we have here is from Red Whooper. Started this out like 9 months ago and finally finished. Happy birthday, Cirrus. And obligatory War Words variant. Ha ha! You can fry. As always, everybody, thank you all for your fan art submissions. If you want your fan art to be shown in a future video, the best way to do so is to drop it into the Discord. If you haven't already joined the Discord, the ! Discord command will bring you to the link where you can do that. That's the thing you can do. So, anyways, let's go ahead and talk about Weiss. So to poison the well here, person who is really, really cool and you should follow, Conyer, already has us started out pretty well. On February 9th, Bari Weiss pushed a story about a St. Louis Children's Hospital whistleblower that was debunked by dozens of patients and parents, and now she's pushing a story that is being debunked by the patient themselves. This isn't journalism, it's fear-mongering. Let's look at the types of things that she writes first. I thought I was saving trans kids. Now I'm blowing the whistle. Jamie Reed is a progressive. She is a queer woman married to a trans man, and she's devoted her career to the vulnerable, which is why she joined the Transgender Center at St. Louis Children's Hospital 4 years ago. But today, she's blowing the whistle. Almost 24 parents of children seen at the clinic, which opened in 2017, say their experiences sharply contradict the examples supplied by Jamie Reed, a case manager who left the WU Center after being employed there for more than 4 years. Reed outlined her concerns in an article published online February 9th. Her sworn affidavit, which included additional allegations, was released that day by Missouri Attorney General Andrew Bailey, who was leading a state investigation. Weird that. So I wonder what type of stuff is being written by somebody who has such a wonderful track record here. Well, let's see here. I felt bullied. Mother of child treated at transgender center speaks out.
I think they talked about this on the Majority Report as well, but this story is just devastating. Listen to what Cirrus is about to read to you, and remember, and I'm sure Cirrus brings this up as well, but just remember as you're hearing this, that the kid gave a response. They felt compelled to give a response. And they say, yeah, this is either entirely a lie or taken out of context to make it look bad. And remind yourself that Bari Weiss can't have done this unintentionally. It takes work to cover up the truth that much. So here we go.
So, we could read the actual article here, or we could accept instead that we already know that the words that are being written by Bari, are not the greatest.
I'm going to read it. Got to hear what they're saying. When he was 14 years old, Caroline's son got a pharmaceutical implant. Oh, part of it might just be part of it might be dead naming and such. I realize now as I'm reading this, I don't know if this really is a son or a daughter. And I don't trust Bari Weiss to say it correctly. Well, all right, here's the summary from what I recall. The mom in the article says that she felt pressured by the doctors to give her child treatments and that her child has, after those treatments, all sorts of mental health problems, including depression and problems at school, etc., etc. The child has responded by saying they had those mental health problems unrelated to a sexual transition. The school declining performance in school is a result of those mental health problems, and in fact, those mental health problems have been helped by the transition, and the transition was overall a healthy thing for them. They also say they were not, the mom and child were not pressured by the hospital. There it is. All right, let's let Suris take it home.
So, why don't we look at the direct words from the person who was being written about the entire time? Maybe that would be better. That would actually be a little better than the words written here. If you want to read this particular article, by all means, you have the ability to. But let's go ahead and look over what...
Also, for the record, when I wanted to VTube, I was going to use that pixel Jake that you often see as the logo for the channel, but I couldn't get the boobs to shake enough like Suris has here. Oh well, maybe I'll get better in the future.
Alex has said. This begins by saying, when... trying to make sure that I don't have a dead name in here. It's fine. We just read Alex's statement. I have reinstalled Twitter to respond to this story and make sure my voice is fully heard. I am Casey. My real name is Alex, but my mom decided it would be best to hide it for anonymity. But this is my story, not hers. And this is not the Free Press's story. About a week ago, my mom contacted Emily Yoff without my knowledge and told her what was supposed to be our story. She expressed her frustration with the transgender clinic at Washington University, many of which are false perceptions that my mom has about the doctors and the clinic. I learned of this article through my mom over the phone when she asked if it was okay that at the FP, the Free Press, published the article. I said that I wanted to read it first. When I read the draft, I was disgusted with what the reporter and my mom had made my experiences out to be. Upon interviewing Emily Yoff, I was told that I had no say in whether or not the article would be published. I asked if my consent was required to publish the article, and the reporter told me that's not how these things work. After she had edited the article and published it, I had not found out about this until 20 hours later, I was extremely frustrated.
So when you have MAGA folks, let's say you're taking the advice from the earlier stream, you're talking with MAGA folks about woke stuff, and you have MAGA folks busting out things like this, like the Matt Walsh bigotry. Point to this article. Point to this article that Barry Weiss was showing everybody, saying, hey, look at this, look at this. And ask them why they felt, and this response from Alex, and ask them why the authors felt the need to lie about it. Why did they feel they had to lie? Why did they feel they had to not include the trans person in the conversation? Why was that? You know the answer. They know the answer. Make them say it. They weren't interested in telling the truth. That's why. And hey, if they can find similar instances, but going the other way, by all means, let us know. I'd love to know if we're misinformed. Thing is, I don't think we are.
The article makes it out that my mother had no say in the implant of the Suprelin. This is completely false. My mother claims that she was pressured into saying yes by the doctors. A big issue that they point out is that the doctors quoted suicide statistics in transgender adolescents. I don't deny that these statistics were quoted, but also sustain that the doctors didn't say that I was at substantial risk of this. The article mentioned that my grades dropped from A's and B's to D's and F's in the semester. This is a completely exaggerated statement. My grades were on a steady decline since 2020 due to an unrelated mental health concern. Speaking of mental health, the article claims that my mental health issues can be attributed to the Suprelin implant. However, my personal experiences show that this is not the case. Since COVID-19, my mental health has been declining, and it was already an issue. Gee, I wonder if there was anything that actually could cause mental health decline in the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic.
You know, we're going to take a break occasionally to read those comments that they give me such a chuckle, I get distracted. If the bosoms, says Mars Falcon, don't properly shake, not a proper avatar doth it make. Sun Tzu, the art of likes galore. A learned man. We're going to get a Pixel Jake with a well-endowed set of squares.
Maybe there's a common thing that happened to a lot of us that we could relate to there. Also, Seaman Monkey Dog, thank you for the follow. I was in counseling with the Washington University Transgender Care Center, in which I was treated amazingly by my counselor. She was a friend to me and offered a great amount of support. This was taken away when my mom revoked consent for the Superlin. After she revoked consent, my father and I, along with the university, attempting to set up a meeting with my mom. She did not attend this meeting, claiming that she was not contacted. Later, she admitted that she was. Currently, Alex is seeking out advice from a lawyer on how to go about proving that their side of things is how everything all went down. There is a lot of actual support in here from people, which is wonderful, but as Twitter's algorithms are what they are, I'm sure that what I'm not seeing is the people who are going to be assholes about this. The entire article here is very, very, very lengthy. But according to the person the article is written about, it's not actually true. So while, again, we could go over the article as it was written, if you want to read it, that's a thing that you can do on your own time. Right now, there seems to be an actual victim involved that actually needs to be reported on, using their actual words. Alex's mom said, "This isn't your story, it's mine. We don't need to your consent to publish this." Yes, they fucking do. So they're talking about legally, and legally, they might not need it, but, you know, journalistic integrity would dictate otherwise. Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to look at some of the comments that have been made on this, because I think
I'm looking forward to it, and I'm looking forward to more of that pretty gal avatar shaking around. But never claimed to be a classy gentleman. But I just gotta get in there. So somebody the other day on a live stream, and folks, just know that your comments are on my mind often longer than they are talked about on stream. I just like to muse over this stuff. But somebody said they once looked at journalism as a kind of priesthood. Me too. Man. When I got into it, was leaving a sales job, wanted to clean my soul, for God's sake, and saw an opportunity for business in media, but also, you know, just did the thing I think maybe everybody who decides they're going to get into journalism does: marathoned a bunch of movies with journalists in them, and just started to see journalists as being, as the commenter said, a kind of priesthood. You swear to follow higher rules in order to do this job than are asked for everybody else just to live in society. I thought that was beautiful. And as someone who is not themselves particularly religious, amazed by the universe, yes, but not religious. There was an appeal there, and I can't tell you how sad it was to get into journalism and find that, at least at the local level, it was more akin to the actual priesthood, with, you know, bad reporters being moved around, with the priests. Actually, we want to talk about what it's really like. It's more like a working at a restaurant, a fast food chain, where the lowest amongst you are the most necessary for the work to get done, and they are treated like garbage. And the result being, it ends up functioning a lot like the actual priesthood, with the fate of the souls of those involved not being taken into consideration. To see a bad priest like this infuriates me. It makes me angrier than pretty much any other group we deal with, because any other group we deal with, at least, anywhere around the world. I was going to say at least America, but anywhere around the world, they are usually a symptom of this group, of the bad journalists, of people handing out bad information. In the United States, we can mostly thank Reagan for that, for removing the fairness doctrine. And great news, if we're successful in 2024, if we can get rid of the red in the House, the Senate, and make sure it stays out of the presidency, we can get a supermajority. We can reinstate things like the fairness doctrine. You can have Fox be unable to exist as it is currently set up. We could do that in just 1 year. Barry Weiss, done, no more career. Ben Shapiro, done, no more career. Who's that guy that's terrified of Sam Cedar? There's a lot, but who's the guy that's really terrified? Like Sam Cedar sent him to the hospital because he had a panic attack over it. What was it? Steven Crowder. That's who. Done. Or at the very least, they can't dare call themselves news. We can put in rules that basically make it illegal to lie knowingly. Those rules wouldn't affect decent people. They would only affect people that are doing things like we see here, straight up lying to their audience. Let's let this person finish it out.
The first comment here shows exactly the type of person this article is being written for. I'm Gen Z, 23 years old. This social contagion has spread everywhere, and I'm one of the few people in my generation speaking out about it and writing about it. Wow. What a weird, specific word to use here. What a weird, strange, specific phrase. I wonder if there's any particular ways in which that specific phrase has been used in the last, few years in regards to trans people. You know, the word social contagion. I wonder if there's any specific scenarios in which that word has caused problems. Transgender identity seems to especially be affecting autistic kids. The rate of autism within trans-identifying people is 7 to 8 times the usual rate. For a lot of kids who feel weird or left out, they think transitioning will solve their problems and give them a...
I don't know if Surus comments on this. Oh, that's too much. I don't know if Surus comments on this. But here's just something I want to point out. I don't know even if that figure they're quoting is accurately recalled, but let's just assume for the sake of the conversation it is. If somebody is seeing a doctor to get their trans care taken care of, whatever that involves, or they're even considering getting their what would you call it? Outward-facing sexual identity, I don't know, adjusted medically. Well, they have access to doctors, don't they? So they probably would have had that autism noticed earlier, wouldn't they? And they probably would have had it attended to, and they probably are an outlier. In fact, they are probably more representative of the population, generally speaking. Just watch out for stuff like that. person seeks medical care for X and they have a higher rate of Y. Well, you see, X causes Y. Well, maybe in a country that charges an arm and a leg, sometimes literally, to deal with medical problems, maybe there's just more people who are able to seek treatment for one thing who are also getting found to have another because they can afford to seek treatment in the first place. If you were to just do your assessment of people's health based off that reasoning, you'd think, oh my God, poor people are the healthiest people on the planet. We should all get rid of our money for the sake of our lives because they never break their bones. They never have cancerous lumps. The only cancer they get, actually, it turns out, is like the super aggressive kind that is you can tell it's killing you. They don't get the little stuff that's preventable early on. That would be the conclusion you'd reach if you only follow that reasoning. But all right, let's see what Surus has to say about it.
Community that affirms them. 20 years ago, they'd just be punk or emo. Yeah, it's almost like as certain things are more socially accepted, more people feel okay coming out of the closet. Also, yes, the rates of people who are trans is higher in people who have these signs that we would associate with autism. That does not magically mean that those people are not trans. It's almost as if gender being a largely social construct and autism being something that affects the way that you navigate the world socially in many cases, it's almost as if you would expect that. And that's not a bad thing.
Yeah, also a really good point about the correlation, especially with gender being, it's a social construct. By the way, I have some opinions on that I'm going to share in the sake of just changing the way we think about this, that I think should be the way right-wingers talk about this stuff. And we'll do that after we finish out this clip. But yeah, that's a good point from Surus. Yeah, there can be correlation. I do think they're missing the main point, though, which is that the rate of everything that can be found medically will be higher amongst people who have transitioned, because people who have transitioned can afford health care. They can afford health care that's not necessary to your immediate survival, even if it's necessary to your long-term survival, because we live in a society where you just have to look like the gender that you feel, or you might put a gun in your mouth. But the rate of everything will be higher, simply because these people can afford health care. And by the way, there's plenty of trans people that can't afford health care, and they got to just make do with a dress and a damn good razor.
It doesn't negate the individual experiences of anybody who's trans. Also, there's plenty of people who are neurotypical and trans. Those are the types of comments on this article. It's those types of comments that make me go, oh, these are the types of people that this is being written for. So they'd be punk or emo because punk and emos are queer-friendly communities? Funny that. Now, there is a case. I do want to see what happens with this, because there is a case here that maybe some of the stuff in the actual article is technically considered libel. Who knows? We'll see. What I am happy about is that despite Twitter being a terrible fucking mess of a platform, I am happy that Alex did hop on Twitter in order to tell their version of the story, their story, that was supposed to be something that they would have consent in talking about, even if they didn't. Even if they didn't in the original version of the story that the mom tried to push through. So, we'll see what develops with this. But for the time being, this is where we throw it back to you guys. Let me know how you feel in the comment section below, and hopefully we can all work to make a better world for people like Alex. As always, everybody, insert end of video tagline here.
Good Lord. So, takeaways. Barry Weiss, this is going to shock you. Dishonest human being. We knew this. But it's good to look at what the dishonest folks are writing occasionally so we can know who the people that we can sway are seeing. So we can know what the people who are swayable are reading. Understanding the disinformation so we know what information we need to gather and have at the ready. But with most of this, it's just pausing and thinking about what they're doing rhetorically. You don't need to have facts and statistics memorized just to address how wild this is. Real simple. When the kid responded, they chose to ignore what the kid had to say. Do you think they would have chosen to ignore what the kid had to say if they would have been like, yeah, my mom's right, and let me give you a quote about how much I've suffered from this? That would be in the article. They weren't interested, however, in reporting reality. They were interested in reporting some nonsense, which is what they're always interested in because they're dishonest people. And when you talk about this, when you talk about it with MAGA folks, or if you talk about it with, I have a family member, for example, who's somewhat iffy on the trans stuff until we talk about it for 2-3 minutes, and then they're voting and thinking the way that we would want. But they just keep getting hit with these articles that are saying, oh, but it's dangerous. Oh, but it's dangerous. And it's just nonsense. So just bring up the fact that they are getting their information from unreliable people. You can show this as an example and simply ask the question, now this other piece of information that you got, what are the odds that it was also unreliable? Have you been listening to anything else Barry Weiss had to say? Remember, you don't have to disprove everything these people ever wrote. Grab one article. Get your Barry Weiss file out. Grab this. Put up your notes there. Notes are just one line. It was an anti-trans article that interviewed the mom. The Barry Weiss was sharing it around, and the child asked to have their opinion put in and was denied. Now you have, for whenever somebody shows you a Barry Weiss piece, you can say, okay, this is who Barry Weiss is. Before we look at this piece, is it going to look like this other thing would have looked if we didn't put in the work to see what the kid had to say? With Matt Walsh, let's bring up that Joe Rogan clip where he's corrected by Rogan, God help us, about the number of people who had surgeries. He said it was millions. It turns out it was within the thousands. Wild. What's my right-wing take? This is how we should be debating this. These are the conversations we should be having. I am so left-wing that I genuinely believe that gender is a construct. And you know what? I'm actually I'm not against anything, but I'm hesitant to recommend surgery for anyone because gender is a construct. And surgery, no matter how safe you get, is a little bit dangerous. And I think if we're at a place where people, what we're talking about essentially is cosmetic surgery. Yes, there's hormones and all that, but it's mostly cosmetic surgery. And if we're at a place where you need cosmetic surgery to feel like the gender you are, and this is going to be something that the left is now talking about in 2 decades. We're not there yet. It's not a conversation worth having right now. I'm just telling you the kind of debates we could be having if we lived in a sane world. If we're at a place where you need to have cosmetic surgery to feel like the gender you are, then our failure is not that this person doesn't have enough access to the surgery. Our real failure is that we make too much hay over gender. I don't know why we can't have people with all the male parts simply looking and acting very feminine and not worrying about what their specific identifying blah, blah, blah is. But if surgery makes you happy, if a tummy tuck or an anti-wrinkle whatever makes you happy, F it, do it. It's America. Do what makes you happy. I just don't like how much our view of gender, I guess, is based on aesthetics. That's not an argument against getting these surgeries. It's simply an argument against how much of a big deal we make about gender for everybody to begin with. And I look forward to being in America where people are having those kinds of debates. Because those are debates that are based in reality. Whether you agree with that specific outlook or not, at least it's based in reality. There's nobody having to like skew facts and stories to try to change that into something that will support their side. Tamara Chance says, "Count me as anti-fascist." Hell yeah, Tamara Chance. Wireless Mike says, "I learned everything I know about doing the news from Anchorman." Here's the thing, though. Not entirely wrong. In fact, Anchorman Anchorman stars Will Ferrell playing a character based off Mort Krim, who is, you might recognize him from actually being in Detroiters. Mort Krim was from Local 4, WDIV, my old stomping grounds. You better believe I love me some Anchorman, and it's actually a pretty good parody of what the news is actually like, including the bizarre rivalries. Mars Falcon, Scotchy. Barry Weiss did editing for the Wall Street Journal, God help me, and New York Times, Christ Jesus. I never really knew of her until she wrote that piece on the intellectual dark web claiming Dave Rubin was a thought whiz. Yeah. Wicked Foxy Dragon says, "What did I miss?" Not much. we were teasing about how dishonest Barry Weiss is. I think that's a segment. What do you guys think? Well, I'm hoping this new way of doing things works out well. I know the VOD on the first segment we did is going to get a couple of frames of me going right at the end. Oof. So, you may have heard that Clarence Thomas got into a bit of hot water. Let's talk about that, and let's see if I can do it while remembering that I need to hit the record button now to start. Oh, this ain't this ain't going well for doing this regularly. Let's try it. So you may have heard that Clarence Thomas, he's in a bit of hot water over his accepting of bribes and his failure to report the accepting of bribes. What's really a bummer about all this is that the taking of bribes themselves isn't illegal. Nothing preventing our Supreme Court from just straight up taking bribes. But what is illegal is not reporting those bribes. It's a strange system we have. We should be advocating for ethics rules that are put in place for the Supreme Court. And we should be doing this in such a way that it doesn't rely on the Supreme Court to put them in place. We should be doing that through our legislature. We're going to get to that after this. But first, let's see what CNN and AOC had to say about it.
Now let's speak with Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez of New York. Thank you for joining us on this holiday Sunday. The abortion pill ruling doesn't take effect for 7 days. You just heard me discussing that with Javier Becerra. The Biden administration is appealing it. Are you satisfied with what you just heard? And what would it mean for women if approval for this pill is revoked nationwide?
Well, I do. While I commend the Biden administration for appealing the decision, and I believe that Secretary Becerra has been doing a phenomenal job in his role, I do think that when it comes to gaming out what the very real possibilities are in the coming days, weeks, and months, this is not just about speculation, but this is about preparation. And the reality of our courts right now is very disturbing. This ruling is an extreme abuse of power. It is an extraordinary example of judicial overreach. The grounds of the ruling are just completely discredited and without grounds. And what we also learned this week is that a Supreme Court justice of this court has been receiving hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of gifts and expenses and having lifestyle subsidies by a billionaire who has been funding the same types of judicial organizations that appointed this judge in a partisan ruling in the first place.
I'm going to get to that in a second. I just want to stick with abortion.
That is a good point, and I'm glad, though, that she's bringing it back to the abortion pill. For the record, right now, you can get that abortion pill in just about any state. It's not necessarily legal in just about any state, but you surely can get it. And I welcome bounty hunters to cross state lines and come try to get me in Michigan. Not because I'm going to be a Harvey Hardass, but because I'm gonna use it as a segment on WYCD Wicked. If you can share this with enough folks in Texas, come on, you giant pansies. You can get the abortion pill mailed to you. In the VOD, we will, of course, have a link to where you can get that pill popped in the description. And, it's easy peasy, folks. So if you would like to have an abortion because it's your body, it doesn't belong to the state of Texas, check out the description, and I will have the link there.
First, and what you just heard me ask the secretary about was something that you called on the Biden administration to do, which is just to simply ignore the court ruling. That's a pretty stunning position if you think about it in the abstract, about the notion of just ignoring a judge's position. So my question is, when this case is resolved by the Supreme Court, should the administration follow that decision if that decision ends up banning this abortion drug?
Well, I want to take a step back and dig into the grounds around ignoring this preliminary ruling as well. There is an extraordinary amount of precedent for this. There is a term known as agency non-acquiescence. And this has been used and for folks saying this is a first, that this is a precedent setting. It is not. The Trump administration also did this very thing, but also it has happened before. The idea of consistency in governance until there is a higher court ruling is not an unprecedented thing to happen. In fact, when the Trump administration did it, it was arguably through a much, a very grave issue when it came to DACA. The Trump administration was ordered to fully reinstate DACA, the DACA program, and they, in a complete defiance, did not do that. They relied.
One thing I love about progressives. Is that they do not hesitate to punch back in the same places with the same strength that the other side uses. I cannot wait for the flood of GOP pissing and moaning about the Biden administration not kneeling before this Texas judge. Can't wait for it. And I hope we're going to hear more and more progressives talking like AOC and saying, wait a minute, I didn't hear these complaints when it was the DACA cases. Didn't hear that. Let's get more DACA, as they say. Let's expect our leaders. Thank you so much, Train. Let's expect our leaders to, that's the pain train. It's coming for you, GOP. Let's expect our leaders to be just as aggressive for the cause of decency as Republicans are for pursuing evil. That's the paladin way, Get crunchy with these demons. Slug it out. That's what we should be doing. Hell yeah, AOC. Keep it up, my friend.
The courts rely on the legitimacy of their rulings. And when they make a mockery of our system, a mockery of our democracy, and a mockery of our law, as what we just saw happen in this mifepristone ruling, then I believe that the executive branch, and we know that the executive branch has an enforcement discretion, especially in light of a contradicting ruling coming out of Washington.
Should that apply if the Supreme Court upholds the Texas judge's decision?
I think one of the things that we need to examine is the grounds of that ruling. But I do not believe that the courts have the authority to have the authority over the FDA that they just asserted. And I do believe that it creates a crisis. Should the Supreme Court do that?
We do need. I hear all the time about how we should keep these decisions out of the Supreme Court's hands. Because, it's a Supreme Court that's right-leaning. Look, we got to make it crystal clear what we're dealing with. We delay this decision, and as a result, the Supreme Court gets to pretend like it wouldn't have ruled this way or that. We're not going to have people voting with the full set of facts. And I agree, this could get a hell of a lot uglier. Could ruin lives. It could kill people. That's what we're talking about with abortion. It's literally life and death for a lot of people. If you can get pregnant, it could be putting your life at risk. But I don't think that means we keep it out of the Supreme Court. I think we make them make a call. Really, does any federal judge have a right to make a ruling on this scale? Do they really? Can one state decide what the rest of the states are going to do? This is, a Texas judge. Does one Texas judge have the right to do this? The answer obviously is no. Make them say yes or no, I think. And deal with the Supreme Court. Do we want one group of people appointed for life to have this much power over us? I don't. Even when they were making decisions that I massively agreed with, the gay marriage decisions. No, they shouldn't have that much power. People that we say are in charge get that much power. And even then, not for life. Not for life. So at a minimum, 2024 comes and goes. First of all, look, country survival depends on this. We need blue House, blue Senate, blue White House. That's simple. And when we get that, because we are going to fight viciously, and we are going to take that. So when that is ours, when we hold that territory, pack the courts at a minimum to deal with the immediate problems that we have. Pack them. And then change the way they work fundamentally so that we do not have multiple decades-long positions on the Supreme Court. Enough is enough. Let's let AOC keep
would
going.
essentially institute a national abortion ban, because you have an extraordinary amount of states who have implemented surgical bans or bans after very early time periods. And then if you pair that with a mifepristone ban, then we will essentially have a ban on abortion. There are certain workarounds. I will admit there would be certain workarounds, but we would have taken a very significant step towards a national abortion ban. Once you ban medication abortion, which represents, or start banning medication abortion, which represents the overwhelming number of abortions in the United States, then we are in extremely dangerous territory. And I would urge the Supreme Court, in its lawlessness that they are exhibiting right now already, their extraordinary conflict of interest, my hope would be that we do not get to that point. But if we do, I do believe that we must start to push back on our system of checks and balances, which is designed to push back on should there be an example of judicial tyranny and judicial overreach.
Let's talk more about the Supreme Court and what you mentioned before, which is that Justice Clarence Thomas, you want him to be impeached after a new ProPublica report this week revealed that he accepted luxury vacations from a Republican billionaire donor without disclosing them. Thomas is now defending himself, and here's what he's saying. He's saying, quote, "Early in my tenure at the court, I sought guidance from my colleagues and others in the judiciary and was advised that this sort of personal hospitality from close personal friends who did not have business before the court was reportable."
I'm not going to go into it because we did a whole video with the wonderful David Feldman. But if you want to see what we think or what I think about the personal hospitality comments, as opposed to gift, as opposed to bribe, that's from Salty Saturday.
Was not reportable, rather. What is your response?
I think that his own statement contradicts many of the facts on the ground and also raises in other ways even more serious questions. Later on in his statement, he stated that the reason and the rationale for this exemption was personal hospitality from an old friend. And he said himself in his statement, a friend of 25 years. Justice Thomas has been on the court for 30 years. And so to say what he is admitting in his statement in an attempt to defend himself is that he began this relationship with a billionaire and receiving these sorts of gifts after he was appointed to the Supreme Court of the United States. I think that in and of itself indicates a very, very serious problem. And then on top of that, he is now implicating his colleagues. And I do believe that Chief Justice John Roberts must now come forward and state if he allows and is allowing this kind of very serious corruption to happen on this court. I think, when it comes to Justice Thomas's statement, when he's talking about his colleagues and when he's talking about who advised him to break the law, I think we need to know who those people are.
Did the Justice Department investigate?
I believe what we're seeing right now is a breaking of the law, and we have to examine what institutions. I know that there are calls for Chief Justice to.
Whoa. Let's stick with that one point for a minute there. We should know who advised Clarence Thomas to break the law. So often. And it's an all politicians or politically involved people thing, sure. In fact, it's an all anybody who's got cameras pointed at him thing. They say somebody else said to do it. Rather than spending all this time trying to figure out whether or not the person is lying, I think the best answer is just to say, okay, you want to pass the buck? Cool. Who? Who told you that? They told you to break the law. Who said it? He talks about how he became friends with this guy after he was seated on the Supreme Court. or at the very least after he was a judge. Okay, Clarence Thomas, you want to pass the buck? Pass it. That doesn't mean we're going to stop chasing it. Tell us who. It makes them deal with the core issue. We do it, yes, so we can find out who's corrupt. That's great. That's a great reason to do it, too. But we're also doing it so that they have to deal with the issue. If they're pointing fingers, say, okay, you are increasing the number of people who we're going to go after. But what you're not doing is stopping us from chasing this down. Because we have to deal with the people in our government who think this behavior is okay. And if you don't have the guts to take responsibility for it yourself, fine. At the very least, that means, I guess, you're not defending it. Good. So show us that unethical clown that told you, Clarence Thomas, that told you that taking a $500,000 trip wasn't taking a bribe, because they lied.
For the Chief Justice Roberts to initiate an investigation, I do not think that this court any longer has the legitimacy, especially after the Supreme Court leak last year, which never came to a conclusion because the investigation itself that Chief Justice Roberts started back then, I believe is very discredited by naming a position that has an inherent conflict of interest because it is employed by those justices.
She got too wishy-washy with it. Look, there was a investigation into leaks, and then all of a sudden, Supreme Court threw the brakes on that. Don't put up with that. In fact, reach out to the most MAGA-leaning people you can and say, hey, remember that investigation into the Supreme Court leaking? We should start that up again. You should contact your politicians and say that you want to get to the bottom of this because they were so damn sure, weren't they? They were so damn sure that the leak was coming from the left side of the court. Left being a real generous term for those folks. Well, let's find out. What do you say? Let's find out. Thank you, AOC, for bringing that back up.
I believe that, and it is the House's responsibility.
And CNN can't stand it.
Ability to pursue that investigation in the form of impeachment.
I also like that she's putting pressure on the House. I can't stand when Republicans take control of something, and so we just say, all right, well, that doesn't have a responsibility to be ethical anymore. No, we should be pressuring the hell out of our politicians, arguably more so when the right controls whatever lever of power we're talking about. They don't get a pass just because they've agreed to be on the bad guys' team. All right, people that would dare sign up for the villains. Show us what you're going to do about this. Make them say that they are going to defend this behavior, in other words, because they are going to defend this behavior. Make them say it. Make them go out and try to come up with a reasoning for why they're going to support this person. And make them stumble and mumble and tumble because, baby, they can't do it. They just can't do it. And they will look foolish. It's just like the woke talk. Why are there people sick of them talking about woke stuff? Because it doesn't make any sense. Congratulations to AOC for forcing him into a corner here.
Let me ask you, I mean, you know full well that the House is now run by Republicans. How are you going to move what you're calling for, articles of impeachment,
I don't care,
through a House that is run by Republicans?
Yeah, I think there is the question of the politics of what we are doing, and there's the question of the course and the accountability and the structures of what we are doing. I admit it is very difficult to see a path in a Republican Party that refuses to hold itself accountable and, in fact, breaches the law itself. for all of their talk of a crime wave and Republicans talking about crime waves across the country, the crime wave is within the Republican Party. It is within all of the what we are seeing. We are seeing breaking of the law by conservative members of the court. We are seeing a former president of the United States just indicted in recent days. I mean, we need to hold our systems accountable, and I do not believe that we should be refusing to do that for political reasons. I believe that we should pursue the course, and if it is Republicans that decide to protect those who are breaking the law, then they are the ones who then are responsible for that decision. But we should not be complicit in that.
Now let's speak with Congresswoman.
And we should not allow them to get the kind of cover that they get, the cover of silence. In fact, let's go to the big screen. Let's do it. Yeah, they get the cover of silence. When a Democrat sees an issue, they're expected to respond to the issue. The only times they are allowed to just stay quiet is when it's something like Pete Buttigieg not doing any real regulations against transportation companies. But never on. Well, even then, as I say that, I'm thinking, no, the people on the far left hold them to account. No, but Republicans get this unique advantage where it's just accepted that they're on the side of the villains. And so they're not asked for their opinion. They're not certain. No one would dream of asking them to vote on it. How embarrassing would that be for our Republican friends if we asked them to go on the record voting against gun control? We already know it won't pass the House. There's no reason to demand in the House that they put their names to that evil. That's a needless way to embarrass them. Of course, that's what we want to do. Of course. If they are the problem, we need to show the American people they are the problem. If Clarence Thomas is corrupt, and we know the House will do nothing about it, we should make Kevin McCarthy have to say no 30 times to 30 different bills that would be proposed to take this clown out. Look, I disagree with a lot of what the media says about the mythical Obama to Trump voter. There aren't as many as the media suggests, but they do exist. I'll never forget, Ashley Babbitt was one. She apparently voted for Obama twice and then was so into Trump that she was willing to get shot to death in the Capitol in order to reinstall him. She participated in a coup. But she voted for Obama twice. Why does that happen? That happens because there are a group of Americans who don't really follow politics at an academic level, but they do see corruption. And we should be auditioning for 2024 to them. Who are the corrupt ones? The GOP. Yeah, you could say corporate Democrats, but when it comes down to the raw, real corruption that we're looking at, not just taking money from X and so you don't dare legislate against them, but straight up putting a criminal in as a judge. Straight up politicians taking bribes, etc., etc. That's the Republican Party through and through. And you need to demonstrate that. And the way you demonstrate that is by forcing them to go on the record about it. You can do that on the media. You can do that in Congress. Tell your representatives that you support impeaching Clarence Thomas. Tell them that you want it brought up in the House. There will be a link in the VOD description. Use it to contact your representatives. Tell them that you, at a minimum, want to see that Kevin McCarthy had to say no to talking about this time and time again. At a minimum, you want that done. Put the pressure on them and make them reveal to America who they are. Mars Falcon says, instead of asking why Republicans hate Law and Order, Dana Bash tried to smack AOC with a "you can't do nothing" sideways swipe. Yeah, CNN is going way more into the whole hey, Republicans, go for us instead of Fox side of things. It's real sad to see. It's sad to see. But they're going to keep doing that, certainly. Wireless Mike says, the only thing the GOP wants out of this is more control over women and the right to persecute and prosecute them at every turn. It's retribution for being allowed to vote. Yep, that's basically them. And Mars Falcon also with the defund Department of Education, keep your government hands off my Medicare, right-wing Americans. Yeah, that's largely what we're dealing with. And the good news is that the people that we are largely organizing against are so blatantly evil, just vicious, selfish, corrupt, lying. They are so much all these things that you can basically go to any average American, ask them what they believe in, nod till they finish, take notes till they finish, say, okay, you believe in these things. Here's why you have been voting against them, you idiot. And they just rattle off true things about the GOP. Fact is, their viciously foul villainy it's not hard to point out. And if you're friendly, but firm, you're going to have a hell of a lot of conversions. You truly, truly are. I don't even think conversion needs to be the main strategy that we are following. I certainly don't think that. If you've been following for a while, you know we already have the numbers. We already have them. I'm just saying it's easiest now, and it makes our job easier in the future. Because the MAGA end of the GOP is uniquely obnoxious, and it's easy for regular folks to follow. The MAGA politicians are not bright. They're certainly not subtle. So it is very easy to follow. This Texas judge, look at their ruling. I think Wicked Foxy Dragon was pointing it out. Let's see. Let me go up here. What did she say? Oh, it was Mars Falcon. Judge also tossed in 2 references to fetal personhood. Just absurd non-argument argument. Had 0 basis for his ruling aside from feelings. Yeah. They've gotten so bad that they have accidentally made it easy to show what they're all about. And when you show what MAG is all about, you can show how it is just a cartoonish version of what the GOP is all about. And when you show that, you can show how it's just that in and of itself is just a more blatant version of what corporate Democrats are all about. Not doing a damn thing for Americans, but instead stealing from Americans in order to give more wealth, more of our hard work to rich people. The only group right now, and the only group right now that is actively fighting against the interests of the rich for the benefit of everybody else, that's progressives. You want to know why the progressives are the biggest tent party? That's why. They're the only ones addressing the real problem. We're going to have more people like Richard Ojeda hanging out with us as time goes on. People who you would think, if you were to listen to very quickly, you might make a snap judgment and think, oh, they're going to be a MAGA psychopath. Well, a lot of them are going to be former MAGA psychopaths. But there's just a lot of people who now see what politics is all about and are going to come around to our way of thinking. Before we go, lest I leave you with the impression that we're giving up on doing anything but converting, because we've been doing a lot of converting-based streams lately. Really want to make it clear that's not the case. And the closer we get to 2024, the more, how do I put this, active things we're going to be able to do, like physically go places, because there will be then a reason to do that. But the reality is, we don't need, it will help, but we don't need to build our numbers for progressive voters. We have the numbers right now already in existence. We have the ability right now, for example, to change legislation in Wisconsin to ungerrymander a bunch of states that are gerrymandered. One of our upcoming streams, possibly tonight, if not this week certainly, is going to be about the next states that we can repair, much like Michigan did in 2018. Wisconsin's on that list now. Not because these are the only states that are gerrymandered, but because these are the states that are gerrymandered where the numbers exist and the mechanics exist to get it fixed within the next couple of election cycles. Some of them by 2024. It's exciting. Genuinely exciting. And I think if we all work together and if we're clever, I think America is going to become a place that we are finally, truly proud to call home. Or if you're not from here, finally, truly a place you're proud to call your neighbor on the world stage. There's a role for all of us. I'm going to keep pitching to you suggestions that may play to your strengths. If you have other strengths, by the way, that you think you have and you want to know how you can utilize them, if you're an artist, if you're a writer, if you're just good at talking, if you're just good at listening, let me know. Go to wickednetwork.com/contact. Let's fox around with some ideas. I do think probably I'm going to start a Facebook page for this show, but I do think we need to have more of a back and forth because you guys have a lot of good ideas. And when I find out about them in the live stream, I want to drop everything and just talk about that. So we're going to talk a little bit more in a forum that's easier to go back and forth on. In the meantime, let me know on wickednetwork.com/contact what your thoughts are. If you've got a story that you want to share or simply a skill set that you think would be of use, let me know. And as time goes on, we are going to just get more and more victories. I'm excited for America's near future. I hope you are as well. This has been a test stream for a new way of doing content on WYCD Wicked. That stands for What You Can Do. I hope to see you at 8 p.m. for the proper show that is in just about 2 hours. We'll see you then. My name's Jake.